The Human Rights Council held its 25th session in Geneva from the 3rd to the 28th of March 2014. The session was opened by the President of the Human Rights Council, Baudelaire Ougandala of Gabon, the President of the UN General Assembly, John Ash, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillay, and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon.
The Human Rights Council is helping the world become more vigilant in tracking the earliest signs of a crisis. And we survey crises and challenges around the world. Your work for accountability and an end to impunity are critical.
During its 4-day high-level segment, the Council heard from a record number of high-level dignitaries and other senior officials who travelled to Geneva to address the Council on various human rights matters. The Commission of Inquiry on the Democratic People's Republic of Korea presented its final report to the Council, pointing to a wide range of human rights violations in the country.
These crimes arise from policies established at the highest level of the state. They have been committed and continue to take place in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea because the policies, institutions, and patterns of impunity that lie at their heart remain in place.
At the end of the session, the Council adopted a resolution on the human rights situation in the country, extending the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea for 1 year.
The resolution also lists all of the crimes against humanity as identified by the Commission and stresses the need to ensure that there be no impunity for such crimes.
The resolution further recommended submitting the report of the Commission to the Security Council through the General Assembly for its consideration of appropriate action, including referral of human rights situations to relevant international criminal justice mechanisms. The Council also heard from the Commission of Inquiry on Syria, now entering its 3rd year of operation.
We have an enormous volume of testimony, over 2,700 interviews, as well as a wealth of documentary material. We do not lack information on crimes or on perpetrators. What we lack is a means by which to achieve justice and accountability.
At the end of the session, the Council adopted a resolution extending the mandate of the Commission for another year. The High Commissioner presented a report on the promotion of reconciliation and accountability in Sri Lanka since the 2009 war.
Almost 5 years since the end of the conflict, it is important for the Human Rights Council to recall the magnitude and gravity of the violations alleged to have been committed at that time by the government and by the LTTE.
At the end of the session, a resolution was adopted requesting the Office of the High Commissioner to undertake a comprehensive investigation into alleged serious violations and abuses of human rights and related crimes by both parties. The crisis in Ukraine and the Crimean Peninsula was addressed throughout the session by delegations. A group of 42 states made a joint statement in which they complained to the United Nations that Russia was justifying its military action in Ukraine through unsubstantiated claims of human rights violations against ethnic Russians.
We express our deepest concern regarding the continuing deterioration of the situation in Ukraine.
This crisis was raised by very ugly forces, the ultra-nationalists, the neo-Nazis and racists. There are not many of them, but their activity and aggressivity is the decisive influence on the domestic and foreign policy course of Ukraine.
The Secretary General also met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on the sidelines of the Council meeting to discuss the situation in the Ukraine. Presentations of key reports were made by 18 human rights experts and bodies touching on various issues such as children in armed conflict, torture, the use of drones in counter-terrorism, and on human rights defenders. Experts working on country mandates also held interactive dialogues with the Council on the human rights situations in Iran, Myanmar, the occupied Palestinian territories, Côte d'Ivoire, Haiti, and Mali. The independent expert on the human rights situation in the Central African Republic updated the Council on her work for the first time since her appointment in January after the special session on the human rights situation in the country. The High Commissioner also presented country and thematic reports submitted by the Secretary General and her office. She also presented her last annual report on the activities of her office, as her mandate will end later this year.
Today, the task of protecting and promoting human rights is as vital as it was 20 years ago. It has been my privilege to guide the work of this office as it has sought to confront many human rights crises and new threats to the rights and dignity of individuals.
During its session, the Human Rights Council held interactive panel discussions on the prevention of genocide, on sexual violence in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, on the promotion and protection of a civil society space, on human rights mainstreaming, and held its annual meetings on the rights of the child and on the rights of persons with disabilities. The Council adopted 15 country reports under its Universal Periodic Review process, whereby each and every United Nations member state's human rights records are reviewed, namely on Saudi Arabia, Senegal, China, Nigeria, Mexico, Mauritius, Jordan, Malaysia, Central African Republic, Belize, Chad, Monaco, Congo, Malta, and Israel. Over 100 side events organized by non-governmental organizations and states took place on the sidelines of the Council session, highlighting a number of emerging human rights issues. On the issue of NGOs, the Council President also urged states to prevent and ensure adequate protection against intimidation or reprisals against those who cooperate with the Human Rights Council and the United Nations as a whole. At the conclusion of the session, the Council adopted 42 texts addressing a wide range of human rights issues, such as the environment, integrity of the judicial system, religious hatred, freedom of thought, and the right to food. It also extended a number of mandates of special rapporteurs and experts, decided to extend technical assistance to countries such as Libya, Guinea, and Haiti. The Council adopted 4 resolutions on the situation in the occupied Palestinian territory and in the occupied Syrian Golan, and decided on the contents of a series of events and panels for its upcoming sessions. Concerning the use of remotely piloted aircraft or armed drones in counter-terrorism operations, the Council adopted a resolution in which it called upon states to conduct prompt, independent and impartial investigations into violations of international laws caused by these. In another resolution, the Council called upon states to avoid using force during peaceful protests and requested the High Commissioner for Human Rights to prepare guidelines for facilitating and protecting peaceful protests based on good practices.